This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Harvester by Gene Stratton-Porter. Read by Cindy Steib. Chapter 7. The Quest of the Dream Girl. The Harvester breakfasted, fed the stock, hitched Betsy to the spring wagon, and went into the dripping, steamy woods. If any one had asked him that morning concerning his idea of heaven, he never would have dreamed of describing a place of gold-paved streets, crystal pillars, jeweled gates, and thrones of ivory. These things were beyond the man's comprehension, and he would not have admired or felt at home in such magnificence if it had been materialized for him. He would have told you that a floor of last year's brown leaves, studded with myriad flower faces, big bark-encased pillars of 1,000 years, jewels on every bush, shrub, and tree, and tilting thrones on which gaudy birds almost burst themselves to voice the joy of life, while their bright-eyed little mates peered questioningly at him over nest rims. He would have told you that Medicine Woods on a damp, sunny May morning was heaven. And he would have added that only one angel, tall and slender, with the pink of health on her cheeks and the dew of happiness in her dark eyes, was necessary to enter and establish glory. Everything spoke to him that morning, but the Harvester was silent. It had been his habit to talk constantly to Belshazzar, Ajax, his work, even to the winds and perfumes. It had been his method of dissipating solitude, but today he had no words, even for these dear friends. He only opened his soul to beauty and steadily climbed the hill to the crest, and then down the other side to the rich, half-shaded, half-open spaces where big, rough mushrooms sprang in a night similar to the one just passed. He could see them awaiting him from afar. He began work with rapid fingers, being careful to break off the heads but not to pull up the roots. When 4 heaping baskets were filled, he cut heavily leaved branches to spread over them, and started to Onabasha. As usual, Belshazzar rode beside him and questioned the Harvester when he politely suggested to Betsy that she make a little haste. "Have you forgotten that mushrooms are perishable?" he asked. "If we don't get these to the city all woodsy and fresh, we can't sell them. Wonder where we can do the best. The hotels pay well. Really, the biggest prices could be had by—" Then the Harvester threw back his head and began to laugh, and he laughed and he laughed. A crow on the fence joined him, and a kingfisher heading for Loon Lake, and then Belshazzar caught the infection. "Begorry! The very idea!" cried the Harvester. "Heaven helps them that help themselves. Now you just watch us maneuver for assistance, Belshazzar, old boy. Here we go." Then the laugh began again. It continued all the way to Onabasha and even into the city. The Harvester drove through the most prosperous street until he reached the residence district. At the first home he stopped, gave the lines to Belshazzar, and taking a basket of mushrooms, went up the walk and rang the bell. "All groceries should be delivered at the back door," snapped a pert maid before he had time to say a word. The Harvester lifted his hat. "Will you kindly tell the lady of the house that I wish to speak with her?" "What name, please?" "I want to show her some fine mushrooms, freshly gathered," he answered. How she did it the Harvester never knew. The first thing he realized was that the door had closed before his face, and the basket had been picked deftly from his fingers and was on the other side. After a short time the maid returned. "What do you want for them, please?" The last thing on earth the Harvester wanted to do was to part with those mushrooms, so he took one long speculative look down the hall and named a price he thought would be prohibitive, $1 a dozen. "How many are there?" "I count them as I sell them. I do not know." The door closed again. Presently it opened and the maid knelt on the floor before him and counted the mushrooms one by one into a dish pan, and in a few minutes brought back $7.50. The chagrined Harvester, feeling like a thief, put the money in his pocket and turned away. "I was to tell you," said she, "that you are to bring all you have to sell here, and the next time please go to the kitchen door." "Must be fond of mushrooms," said the disgruntled Harvester. "They are a great delicacy, and there are visitors." The Harvester ached to set the Girl to one side and walk through the house, but he did not dare. So he returned to the street, whistled to Betsy to come, and went to the next gate. Here he hesitated. Should he risk further snubbing at the front door or go back at once? If he did, he only would see a maid. As he stood an instant debating, the door of the house he had just left opened and the Girl ran after him. "If you have more, we will take them," she called. The Harvester gasped for breath. "They have to be used at once," he suggested. "She knows that. She wants to treat her friends." "Well, she has got enough for a banquet," he said. I don't usually sell more than a dozen or two at one place." "I don't see why you can't let her have them if you have more." "Perhaps I have orders to fill for regular customers," suggested the Harvester. "And perhaps you haven't," said the maid. "You ought to be ashamed not to let people who are willing to pay your outrageous prices have them. It's regular highway robbery." "Possibly that's the reason I decline to hold up one party twice," said the Harvester as he entered the gate and went up the walk to the front door. "You should be taught your place," called the maid after him. The Harvester again rang the bell. Another maid opened the door, and once more he asked to speak with the lady of the house. As the Girl turned, a handsome old woman in cap and morning gown came down the stairs. "What have you there?" she asked. The Harvester lifted the leaves and exposed the musky, crumpled, big mushrooms. "Oh!" she cried in delight. "Indeed, yes! We are very fond of them. I will take the basket and divide with my sons. You are sure you have no poisonous ones among them?" "Quite sure," said the Harvester faintly. "How much do you want for the basket?" "They are $1 a dozen. I haven't counted them." "Dear me! Isn't that very expensive?" "It is, very," said the Harvester. "So expensive that most people don't think of taking over a dozen. They are large and very rich, so they go a long way." "I suppose you have to spend a great deal of time hunting them. It does seem expensive, but they are fresh and the boys are so fond of them. I'm not often extravagant. I'll just take the lot. Sarah, bring a pan." Again the Harvester stood and watched an entire basket counted over and carried away, and he felt the robber he had been called as he took the money. At the next house he had learned a lesson. He carpeted a basket with leaves and counted out 1.5 dozen into it, leaving the remainder in the wagon. 3 blocks on one side of the street exhausted his store, and he was showered with orders. He had not seen any one that even resembled a dark-eyed girl. As he came from the last house, a big red motor shot past, and then suddenly slowed and backed beside his wagon. "What in the name of sense are you doing?" demanded Doctor Carey. "Invading the residence district of Onabasha," said the Harvester. "Madam, would you like some nice, fresh country mushrooms? I guarantee that there are no poisonous ones among them, and they are gathered this morning. Considering their rarity and the difficult work of collecting, they are exceedingly low at my price. I am offering these for $5 a dozen, madam, and for mercy's sake don't take them, or I'll have no excuse to go to the next house." The doctor stared, then understood and began to laugh. When at last he could speak, he said, "David, I'll bet you started with 3 bushels and began at the head of this street, and they are all gone." "Put up a good one," said the Harvester. "You win. The first house I tried they ordered me to the back door, took a market basket full away from me by force, tried to buy the load, and I didn't see any one save a maid." The doctor lay on the steering gear and faintly groaned. The Harvester regarded him sympathetically. "Isn't it a crime?" he questioned. "Mushrooms are no go, I can see that. Or rather they are entirely too much of a go. I never saw anything in such demand. I must seek a less popular article for my purpose. To morrow look out for me. I shall begin where I left off to day, but I will have changed my product." "David, for pity's